Hello guys, welcome to my tutorial video channel. This is part 5 of advanced problems on demand function. Here I am going to solve 3 problems. Problem number 1 directly relates to demand function, and problem number 2 and 3 are required to be solved or required to be interpreted graphically. Correct? Now let's get into the problem. Number 1. What is stated? If total revenue increases due to fall in price of a commodity, show ED is greater than 0. That is, price elasticity of demand is greater than 0. So we have to show that price elasticity of demand of a commodity is greater than 0 if, as a result of fall in price of that commodity, total revenue increases. Okay, so let's start solving the problem. Solution: let the demand function be Q equals to FP. This is the demand function, Q equals to FP. Now, total revenue, that is TR, is equal to P into Q. Total revenue equals to price of the commodity into quantity demanded and supplied. Now differentiating TR with respect to Q. Differentiating TR with respect to Q. What we get? We get del TR del Q equals to Q plus P dQ dP. TR equals to PQ, therefore del TR del Q equals to Q plus P dQ dP. This means del TR del Q equals to, we take Q as common, so Q multiplied by, within bracket, 1 plus P by Q into dQ dP. Right? TR equals to PQ. Now we have differentiated total revenue, that is TR, with respect to Q, and we have got del TR del Q equals to Q plus P dQ dP. This means del TR del Q equals to Q common, within bracket, 1 plus P by Q dQ dP. This means del TR del Q equals to Q, within bracket, 1 minus ED. Why 1 minus ED? You see, ED is, what is ED? ED equals to minus P by Q into del Q dQ dP. Is it okay? ED is equal to minus P by Q into dQ dP. Here we have P by Q into dQ dP. So this must be minus ED. Now, if as a result of falling price of a commodity, the total revenue increases, then del TR del Q must be less than 0. Now, if TR increases with fall in price, if TR increases, upward arrow means increasing. If TR increases with fall in price, del TR del Q must be less than 0. Now if del TR del Q is less than 0, then this will be less than 0. This means Q within bracket 1 minus ED will be less than 0. Right? Now Q cannot be less than 0. Q cannot even be 0 because Q must be a positive quantity. Otherwise TR would have been 0. So Q is a positive quantity. So Q must be greater than 0. Q cannot be less than 0. Not even 0. Q cannot be less than 0 and Q cannot be equal to 0. It must be greater than 0. If Q is more than 0, greater than 0, that is positive number, then 1 minus ED is less than 0. Right? If Q is greater than 0, then 1 minus ED must be less than 0. Now 1 minus ED can be less than 0 if and only if ED is greater than 1. Therefore, ED is greater than 1. Hence, proved. So what we have done? We have assumed the demand function as Q equals to Fp. That is, Q is a function of price. Quantity demanded is function of price. Now total revenue TR equals to P into Q, price of the commodity into quantity demanded and supplied. Now differentiating TR with respect to Q, we get del TR del Q equals to Q plus P into dQ dP. This means del TR del Q equals to, I have taken Q as common, so what remains in the bracket? 1 plus P by Q del dQ dP. This means del TR del Q equals to Q into within bracket 1 minus ED. Why? Because ED is minus P by Q into dQ dP, and here we have P by Q into dQ dP, so this must be minus ED. Now if TR increases as a result of fall in price, then del TR del Q must be less than 0. So del TR del Q, we have set del TR del Q as less than 0. So this becomes less than 0. Q into 1 minus ED is less than 0. Now Q must be greater than 0. Q cannot be less than 0. Q cannot be equal to 0. So Q must be greater than 0. Because Q must be a positive quantity. Otherwise TR would have been 0 or negative. That is impossible. So Q must be greater than 0. If Q is greater than 0, then 1 minus ED must be less than 0, and 1 minus ED can be less than 0 if and only if ED is greater than 1. Hence proved. So what is proved? If as a result of fall in price of a commodity, the total revenue increases, then the price elasticity of demand of that commodity must be greater than 1. So it is proved. Now come to problem number 2. What is given? X and Y are substitute commodities and supply of X has fallen due to disturbances in the factor market. Now graphically illustrate equilibrium price and quantity of both the goods. That means we have to illustrate graphically equilibrium quantity and price of X as well as Y. Now this problem is related to movement along and shift of demand curve as well as supply curve. You see, movement along the demand curve or supply curve takes place only if there is change in price of that commodity. Suppose this is demand curve and this is supply curve. If price of that commodity, say X or Y, whatever it may be, is P1, quantity demanded is Q1. If price falls to P2, quantity demanded will increase to Q2. That means the movement takes place along the demand curve from this point to this point. The consumer is walking down the demand curve from this point to this point. There is no shift in the demand curve. Why? Because there is only change in price of the commodity. If any other factors change, then there will be shift in the demand curve. Now same thing happens to supply curve. You see, this is supply curve, this is upward sloping. The producer is supplying OP1 units at OP1 price. As price increases from OP1 to OP2, the producer supplies OQ2, that is, supply increases from OP1 to OQ2. Why this has happened? Because price has increased from P1 to P2 and the producer has moved from this point to this point. That is, the movement has taken place along the supply curve. There is no shift in the supply curve. Why? Because here only price of the commodity has increased, other factors have remained unchanged. If any other factor or factors change other than price, that means if price remains constant and one or more than one factors change, then there will be a shift in the demand curve as well as supply curve. So these are movement alone. Movement alone, the demand curve and supply curve. Now consider these diagrams once again. This is demand curve, this is supply curve, and say the consumer is demanding OP1 units at OP1 price. Now price of that commodity has remained unchanged and some other factors have changed. Say for example, income of the consumer is increased, price of a related commodity has increased or decreased, or supply of a related commodity has increased or decreased, or any other factor has changed. Say for example, taste and preference, custom, etc., etc. In those cases, there will be altogether shift in the demand curve as well as supply curve. Right? First consider this diagram. If price remains constant and supply of a substitute commodity has fallen, say for example, tea and coffee are substitute commodities. Now if supply of tea falls due to disturbances in the factor market, what will happen? Tea will become scarce in the market and the producers will consume more of coffee. Correct? So demand for coffee will increase. So here what will happen? The consumer will purchase more of that commodity. Here I have taken the example of coffee at the same price. Why? Because tea is now a scarce commodity in the market. This is shift of the demand curve. That is, the consumer is jumping from this point to this point. He is purchasing OQ2 units. Previously he was purchasing OP1 units at the same price OP1. same thing will happen in case of supply curves. Suppose the producer is supplying OQ1 units at OP1 price. Correct? Now, if price of the commodity remains unchanged and some other factors that influence supply changes, say for example, availability of any input, as has happened in our example, then the producer will not be able to supply the required quantity in the market because he is able to produce less now. In that case, the supply curve will shift towards left. The supply curve will shift towards left. As a result, price will increase. We know when supply falls, the price of the commodity increases. And here you see there is altogether shift in the supply curve. That means the supplier is supplying the same quantity OQ1 at OP2 price. Previously, the price was OP1 and the supplier was supplying OQ1 units. Now, he is supplying the same quantity at a higher price, that is at OP2 price. So this is shift in the supply curve. Now apply the same logic in our problem. Okay. This is for commodity X whose supply has fallen, and this is for commodity Y. On x-axis we measure quantity and on y-axis we measure price. Now this is the supply curve of X. Sx is supply curve of X. Due to some disturbances in the factor market, the supply has fallen. There is no change in price of the commodity. So the supply curve will shift towards left. That means the producer will supply the same quantity, say OQ, at a higher price. Say this was P1 and this is P2. Now you see, two things have happened. Number one, supply of X has fallen and price of X has increased. As we have taken the example of tea and coffee, supply of tea has fallen. As a result, price of tea has increased. So what will be the impact on quantity demanded of commodity Y, that is coffee? What will be the impact on quantity demanded of coffee as a result of fall in supply and increase in price of tea, as we have taken the example. Now this is the demand curve of commodity Y, right? The consumer is purchasing OQ1 units at OP1 price. Now as price of tea, in this example, price of X has fallen. As a result, supply of X has fallen. As a result, its price has increased. The consumer will purchase more of Y because X and Y are substitute commodities. So, at the same price, the consumers will purchase more. So, the demand curve will shift from dy to say dy1, and this will be the quantity purchased of Y now. That means the consumers will increase their purchase of commodity Y at the same price. Price of Y has not changed. Correct? So what we have done, we have drawn the supply curve of X as a result of internal disturbances in the factor market. The supply curve has shifted towards left, its supply has fallen. As a result, price has increased from P1 to P2. Now in this diagram, I have shown the impact of fall in supply and increase in price of X on quantity demanded of Y. This is the original demand curve of Y, dy, and at OP1 price, consumers are purchasing OQ1 units. As a result of fall in supply of X and increase in its price, the consumers will shift towards Y. That means the consumers will demand more of Y. The consumers will purchase more of Y at the same price. So the demand curve will shift from dy to dy1 and the consumers will purchase OQ2 units at the same price. This is the impact of fall in supply and increase in price of X on quantity demanded of Y. Correct? So problem number 2 is solved. Now come to problem number 3. What is stated? Price of AC machines, air conditioner machines, increases during summer. So do its demand and supply. Graphically illustrate the phenomenon. Price of AC is increasing during the summer, as well as its quantity demanded is increasing, and to meet the quantity demanded, its supply is also increasing. Now ask yourself one question: is it violating the law of demand? Because a law of demand states when price of a commodity increases, quantity demanded of it falls, and when price of a commodity falls, quantity demanded of it increases. Other things remaining same, that is the ceteris paribus assumptions. So in this case, is it violating the law of demand? No, it is not violating the law of demand. Let us see why. Say this is the demand curve of air conditioner machine. Say dA. Correct? Okay. Now, the quantity demanded and supplied, say QA, and price is PA. Correct? Now during summer, the producers are increasing the price of the commodity, as well as its demand is also increasing, because people are purchasing more of AC machines to get relief from the scorchy summer days. So in that case, the demand curve will shift parallelly rightward. Say this is dA dash. Right? Now, say this was the original supply curve. Now as demand has increased, the producers, they say this is SA, is the original supply curve. The producers will supply more of the commodity. So the supply curve will shift from SA to SA1, that is, it will shift parallelly rightward. You see, price has increased as well as quantity demanded and supplied has increased. Price has increased from PA to say PA dashed, and quantity demanded has increased from quantity demanded as well as quantity supplied has increased from OQA to OQA dash. Right? Previously it was the equilibrium point, now this is the equilibrium point. DA is the original demand curve, SA is the original supply curve, and BA was the equilibrium price and QA was the equilibrium quantity. Now during summer, price of the AC machines have increased as well as its demand and supply have increased. Now due to increase in demand, suppliers will supply more to meet the demand. So the demand curve shifts parallelly rightward. Consumers are demanding more to get relief from scorchy summer heat, scorchy summer days. At the same time, to meet the increased demand, the suppliers will supply more. So the supply curve will shift from SA to SA1, not 1, say SA dash. So the price is increasing from OPA to OPA dash, and quantity demanded and supplied is increasing from OQA to OQA dash. Okay? So problem number 2 is also illustrated graphically. That means this phenomenon is illustrated graphically. It is not violating the law of demand actually. There is both shift in demand and supply curves. Right? So we have solved all these 3 problems. This is part 5 of advanced properties on demand function. I hope it is well understood by you. Still, if you have any doubt in your mind, if you have any query, if you need more explanation on any point, please feel comfortable to let me know through the comment box. I shall be more than glad to respond to all the relevant queries and relevant doubts. And if you think this video has benefited you, please do share the video with your friends so that they can also get benefit by watching this video. And finally, I would request you to subscribe and like my channel, and let me provide you with more meaningful, useful and customized videos. If I know what are your problems, where you are stuck, then I will be able to help you come out from those problems. Okay? And finally, thank you for watching this video. Stay well and goodbye.